So I believe bracing the core is very important because you got to lift heavy things to get overall strong. And I believe that bracing against the sagittal flexion extension is very good. I think bracing against side bending is questionable, really not that important because you really want to coil with that. And bracing against transverse only is counterproductive. You teach the little intrinsic muscles of the spine to do what they shouldn't be doing, and you teach the lats to do what they shouldn't be doing. And there's never a circumstance, not once, athletically or otherwise, where you want to do that. Brace yourself in neutral 50-50 against a transverse force.
That was biomechanist and inventor David Weck speaking on the principles of training or not training the bracing core in each plane of motion based off of what we actually see in athletes in sport. You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by SimpliFaster. SimpliFaster is an online athletic performance technology shop distributing items such as the Freelap timing system, GymAware, K-Box, 1080 Sprint, and the SpeedMat. I've gotten many of these items from SimpliFaster and can confidently say that they make today's best training technology available to everybody. The Freelap timing system has revolutionized both my practices and my athlete assessments, allowing me to look at the 10-meter fly capability of dozens of athletes in a matter of seconds. It is wireless, compact, portable, and incredibly versatile. The K-Box and 1080 Sprint are fantastic tools for any coach looking to build speed, agility, and implement training scenarios that go beyond the traditional weight room. The 1080 Sprint is being used by great coaches training some of the fastest sprinters in the world, and it truly represents high-performance speed training. I can personally attest that SimpliFaster's customer service is second to none. Christopher at SimpliFaster responds quickly to queries, and anyone who makes a purchase from SimpliFaster is in good hands. If you want to acquire some of the best high-tech training equipment available, stop by SimpliFaster.com. That's simply with an I, faster.com. They are the future of coaching technology. Welcome to episode 107 of the Just Fly Performance Podcast. Today we have biomechanist and inventor David Weck. David is the creator of WeckMethod and also the CEO and founder of BOSU Fitness. Yes, he invented the BOSU ball. So before you just tune right out, you listen to that and be like, okay, I'm not listening to this. David's knowledge of the human body, biomechanics, and locomotion goes very far beyond the idea of you won't get as strong training on balance balls, or you won't be able to lift as heavy a weight training on balance balls, or that type of paradigm. So I first heard of David on the Barbell Shrug podcast, and I was really blown away. I mean, Barbell Shrug, great podcast, a lot of awesome strength practitioners on there. David was the first guy I heard on there who was really into biomechanics on a much more than skin deep level. And by skin deep, I mean like just making a general assertion of the trunk or the core based off of usually like a barbell movement. You need to squat this or deadlift this. You need to brace your trunk, your core, but it doesn't get beyond that. And so sport movement is much more complex. Your sprints and your jumps, there's so much going on, and so much that, you know, the more you learn about joints and what to watch, it's just crazy how deep the rabbit hole goes. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I'm passionate about is drawing the sports performance field closer to what actually happens in sport, and digging up training implications based off that. I love lifting heavy barbells. I love barbell training, the spirit of barbell training. I think it's awesome. I just am always into the whole package, the whole picture. I want to do whatever I can to make athletes better. Anyways, listening to David on the Barbell Shrugged podcast, you really saw just this tremendous insight into the inner workings of the human body, and not even just the workings of it, but also just developmental principles, how we evolved and came to be as humans, how we locomote, kind of a fancy word, but looking at just how we move and how we create movement and locomotion it's huge. It relates to everything. And so that's one of the reasons I'm just really excited to have this talk with David today. So yeah, as I mentioned, he's a creator of WeckMethod, inventor of the BOSU ball, as well as many other products, such as a new version of the BOSU ball that offers a little more stiffness and implications in training the foot, the RMT Club, and other products. David has been in the fitness industry for over 20 years, has helped lots of people as well as elite athletes from multiple sports. And today, I wanted to chat with David specifically about something that I think is a total hot button. You kind of heard me mention just a minute ago about how one of my things and one of the things I hope to bring to the industry is just taking a deeper look at what happens in the sport and on the field, and what are the actions that are going on in the actual sport, and then looking at that. And one of the things that is a frequently debated is the core and the trunk, and this idea of bracing the core. And so when we tend to put our paradigm in sports performance on the barbell, that can shift where we put our priority in terms of how we look at the trunk, versus if your starting paradigm is human biomechanics, locomotion, and what happens on the field, it may change things. And so that's where David has so much to bring to the table, and is going to really deep dive into what actually happens with the trunk, the ribs, the muscles related, and then when athletes are moving. So we're going to go through this in a depth that includes different locomotion theories of human development. We're going to talk about tons of ways to address the coiling core, which David will. We're going to talk about lots of ways to address proper trunk training. So how do we infuse this into our athlete training programs based off what we are observing in sport? And again, I think that with anything that's debated, just go test this out. Like go use these methods with your athletes and see if it makes an instant difference. And that's something I'm a huge believer in. If you do things right, you will see changes very quickly, because you're working in the manner that the human body is meant to be working. So this is a fully loaded episode. Also, just one little FYI, there is some bad words in this one. So if you have kids or are at work and have run at crank to 11, you may want to turn down just a little bit. But and again, like some episodes like these, they're loaded. They're stuff that's controversial. Sometimes it gets hot. So looking forward to bringing you this one. So let's get onto the show, episode 107 with David Weck. David, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Joel. This is a great opportunity. I came across your podcast not too long ago, and we're both geeks, and there's a lot of geeks listening to this, and we're going to be dropping some truth bombs here that are about as controversial as can be, but it's all in an interest of making every step stronger for everyone, enhancing function and performance. And so speaking to you, it's pure bliss right now. I'm looking forward to this a great deal.
Yeah, well, yeah, when I was reading kind of a little bit of the writings you had done based off my early questions, I'm really excited to talk to you. It's funny, I had no idea who you were until I listened to the Barbell Shrugged podcast, and I listened to a lot of those, and that's a great show. But there's not a lot of like real detailed biomechanists on, in any podcast, people who really dig apart the human body. So I was like, a lot of things you said, I was just like, whoa. Like I actually went back and listened to it a few times, and just it really is amazing, the paradigm of watching the human body in motion in its uninhibited, uncoached state, and taking things away. There's a lot of gold there. So I'm excited to pick your brain on it all today.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'm going to share everything that I can in this very short time, and then we will follow up with more, I am certain.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So let's kick it off. And so for people who don't know who you are, clue us in on your background, athletically, biomechanics, coaching the human body. Where have you been and where are you now?
Okay, so basically I'm the little train who could. I wasn't a great athlete. I was a very good athlete. I played Division III college football. Football was my passion. I was cut out to be a middle distance runner, but, I wanted fast. So I could dunk a volleyball, right? And I ran a 4.640. And a lot of it was hard earned rather than God just put me on the earth to do those things. So I've always been incented to use my brain to help my body function at its best. And in football, I really studied the X's and the O's to excel at college football. So I was better than I was. And then I pursued acting for 10 years. 10 years into that gig, I invented the BOSU ball. And as Barbell Shrug said, okay, we found the asshole, right? I invented the BOSU ball. And at that time, a starving actor, 30 years old, what am I going to do for money? Oh, cha-ching, I invented the BOSU ball. So I worked extremely hard. I got that off the ground. And then rather than build the empire myself, what I did was I licensed the product. And what that did was it bought me time. All of a sudden, it's mailbox money. And I've had mailbox money now for more than a decade and a half. And so I do what I love to do every single day, which is study movement. And you mentioned about, studying biomechanics. You see, I think you got to go where the money is, right? And there's not a lot of money in the study of speed because there's nothing to sell. Affluent people don't go to Dick's looking for track spikes. They want to go buy a golf club. You want to buy a $15,000 bicycle. You want to buy running shoes for your 10K that you are not very good at, right? If you're sprinting past the age of 25, you either love it so much or you're getting paid a lot of money to do it. So if there's no money, where is the brain power? Where's the incentive? Where's the motivation? Couple that with the fact that if you're in the game and the money's not in the mail, then you got to perform right now. So the pressure's on. You're the strength coach. You're the coach. There is very little leeway for experimentation, right? Oh, gee, guys, I got this theory. It may work, and if it does, great. But if it doesn't work, you're going to lose. That doesn't fly. So you have to portray an air of confidence for your athletes, because the mental state of an athlete is arguably as important as any other state or any other factor, physical and otherwise. So there's a stifling of innovation when you're in the hunt. And so I invented the BOSU ball. I didn't have to be in the hunt. I could do whatever I wanted, right? And I wanted to study movement. And a long, long time ago, when I first invented it, I said, okay, I am going to master balance measured by locomotion. That's how I'm going to know whether or not I'm making progress. Is it faster? Faster is faster, and that's all that matters. So objectivity is the key. It's the king. And otherwise, we have Christians and Muslims fighting each other. They go to different heavens and hells. Subjectivity is the kiss of death, because you get mired in the mud, and there's no use in even talking. So what I'm here to talk about is based in the objective reality that there are certain things that you must do at the fundamental level to locomote most efficiently. And some of the things that I'm saying, the basic crux of what I'm saying, has never been said before. And that's extremely intimidating. And it was the wherewithal that the BOSU ball gave me that allowed me to go on this journey. And believe me, I wouldn't be talking the way I'm talking and sharing what I'm sharing the way I'm sharing it if I didn't know. So that's who I am. If I were a great athlete, I'd have finished up an NFL career and I wouldn't know a damn thing about this.
So I guess every time we go to a health club, we see a BOSU ball sitting there, we can look at that and think of it as a symbol of the time that you've got to invest in human biomechanics locomotion that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do.
Millions and millions and millions of examples of that fact.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the ability to sit down and study, I think, is just so valuable because, so many coaches in the field, it's just hard to have time to breathe sometimes with the coaching hours and the lifestyle in those cases.
Oh,
so it's
and Charlie Francis, who, I try to read everybody, right? So I want to learn from every single person. And Charlie Francis obviously is one of the greats, right? Lots to learn from Charlie Francis. Charlie Francis was sleeping on sofas, right? I mean, Charlie Francis he couldn't rub two nickels together because he was so passionate about what he did. And, you don't really get paid that much for it. And it's not even like, Freddie Roach, the boxer, right? Where you're getting a piece of the purse from Manny Pacquiao because you're his trainer. And if you took the money out of NFL and NBA and you put it all in track and field, well, I don't think Usain Bolt would be the fastest guy ever. Because, again, you got to go where the money is. And we're in this business because we love it. This is what we choose to do with our time. And that's why I love you so much, is because when I listen to your podcast, you are curious, right? You come at it with the cup ready to get filled up. You know a ton. And you said something to me before we, talking the other day, where it was, it has to pass the test through me, myself, if it's going to make it to my athletes. There is a certain advantage that one has if you are athletic enough to feel the truth. You can test and vet things and then teach it better if you actually can do, because feeling is knowing. So if you've never played the guitar, it's hard to teach guitar lessons.
No, right on. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a good lead off to, I think, what our first thing we can end up talking about is the just different aspects of the core, and getting into this bracing and coiling idea, or bracing versus coiling. And the first memory that comes to my mind when talking about speed and the core and what it's doing is I read an article and it was talking about planks. and it was like, basically you can brace and lock down and get this position, but that doesn't mean you're going to be in it when you're moving. And that was like a whoa. Like I was just trying to process, that was like me at 25. I'm sitting here trying to like process this like paradigm shift in my early coaching life. And then obviously moving forward, there's just been, especially with some of the work that you're doing and talking about, there's definitely been nothing but mind-opening constructs. And yeah, like I feel like it's something you have to come at from a beginner's mind, because strength and conditioning is still a young field. And if you take everything as given, it's just, okay, brace your core, pal off press, this is going to somehow make you a better athlete. I don't think really get too far. But I wanted to ask what is your take on, now this is a loaded question. And we talked about too, Cal Dietz posting something on this, on how the bracing core shuts you down neurologically, and just all hell ensued. But the difference between the coiling core and the bracing core. Okay, what's your take? Yeah.
All right. So let's first talk about some things I think your listeners, probably we want to get down to the nitty gritty brass tacks. So we're going to talk about function. We're going to talk about fundamental function, and practically universal function. We're talking about locomotion. Okay. So locomotion, aside from breathing and eating, digesting, eliminating, locomotion is the most important thing you can do, functionally speaking. Okay, because that is key. You walk to the swimming pool, you walk to the horse ring, or wherever you go, right? And so by upright bipedal locomotion, which is contingent upon one's ability, way back when, to throw sticks and stones and to swing sticks. These were the absolute keys to being able to locomote, because we don't have claws and we don't have big fangs, etc. Okay? So it's that holy trinity that forms the foundation for every single thing else we do. Okay, so now with the bracing core, I define the bracing core as two fundamental ways to brace the core. The first one is brace and don't breathe to pick up heavy things. And the next one is brace and breathe to create the diaphragmatic differentiation so that you can breathe under stress. Okay, you absolutely under no circumstance want to brace your core in neutral against a transverse only force. So a pal-off press is the quintessential it's the quintessential representation of the misunderstanding and just how upside down the industry is when it comes to their belief about movement performance. So I believe bracing the core is very important, because you got to lift heavy things to get overall strong. And I believe that bracing against the sagittal flexion extension is very good. I think bracing against side bending is questionable, really not that important, because you really want to coil with that. And bracing against transverse only is counterproductive. You teach the little intrinsic muscles of the spine to do what they shouldn't be doing, and you teach the lats to do what they shouldn't be doing. And there's never a circumstance, not once, athletically or otherwise, where you want to do that. Brace yourself in neutral 50-50 against a transverse force. Yet, dogma for the past 10 years is, oh, you don't know anything if you don't know this, the pal-off press, the pal-off press, the pal-off press, right? There's a lot of intellectual bullying that goes on when I know best and you don't kind of a thing. If I have CS behind my name and you have ACE, well, I'm better than you, right? I'm smarter than you, right? I have more experience than you. So there's a lot of that nonsense going on, okay? So now the coiling core, that's the figure 8. Grakovetsky is the guy who defined or coined the term spinal engine. Okay, let me explain. Look at evolution, macrocosmic. Look at the very first animals on the planet. They floated in water and they wiggled side to side to get from here to there, and hence the Piscean strategy of movement was born. That means side bending is what fish do, and that's what you do when you have the buoyancy. You have the luxury to indulge in the side bending to get you from here to there. Now, as soon as you leave the buoyant water, the fluid, and you get on land, you got to prop yourself up. Now you're not buoyant anymore. So you prop yourself. You side bend. One part of your body makes progress with virtually no effort, because efficiency is the law of the jungle. So you side bend. You put your right hand or limb or fin that turns into a limb. And then you prop yourself up with this axial counter rotation, and boom, other side, other side, other side. And that's the amphibious or reptilian strategy, where you are essentially, the spine is horizontal, but in that moment, the spinal engine was born. And when the hominid, us, propped themselves up and climbed into the trees and then discovered the vertical arrangement. I think that there's something very profound about this verticality, the polarity of having your brain and the cerebral fluids at the very top, polar opposite to the tail. Okay? I think that there's something very special about that. We fell in love with the efficiency of that. And so what we learned to do is we learned to balance it out and create the most potential movement energy that makes us the ultimate endurance, beast of the large creatures, etc. Okay? And evolution doesn't work by like, oh, you get to start over. Because if it did, we'd have wheels and we'd have jets, okay? We look a lot like a dog or a cat in our skeleton, and a fish also has a spine that's segmented. So we didn't just abandon what the framework was. We built upon what came before. And so because of the curvature, the S curvature, particularly the lordotic lumbar spine, when you side bend in the frontal plane, a biomechanical reality is that you create an axial rotation, counter rotation of the shoulders and the hips. So in locomotion, the shoulders do an underhand figure 8 and the hips do an overhand figure 8. If you're crawling or doing the reptilian, it's opposite. That's an overhand figure 8 with the shoulders and an underhand with the hips. And it works either way, but for upright bipedal locomotion, it is very simple, it is very specific, and it is what it is. It's an underhand figure 8 with the shoulders, overhand figure 8 with the hips. The shoulder goes down and back, the same side hip comes up and forward, and the center of gravity goes straight, and your head lands with your head over your foot. This is fundamental to balance. It's what all the good runners do, whether distance, sprinters, men, women, that's what they do. And then you have the pedestrian theory of locomotion in direct opposition to spinal engine theory, which is Grakovetsky. Now, let me just say as an aside, Grakovetsky, he didn't understand the myofascial or muscular consequences to his spinal engine. He didn't recognize the simple truth that the lats are Bo Jackson. The lats carry the ball if you want to win the game. The lats bridge and literally connect the hips and the shoulders. It's the lats that lead the locomotion. The tissue directions of the lats, the multiple origins, everything about them is there for you to optimize the spinal engine. And when you do that, now everybody else on the team, all the other muscles, all the other structure gets to do their role in proportion to support Bo Jackson, right? We don't want to hand the ball to somebody else. So the lats, Grakovetsky focused too much on the intrinsic and the multifidi and, he didn't get it. He understood it from the skeleton. He didn't get it from the myofascial, okay? And so, there's a kink in the argument. Okay, well, his whole theory is wrong. No, it's not. Pedestrian theory is that the legs carry the body and that the core does not generate power, right? The core transmits power from the large ball and socket joints, the hips and the shoulders. The core, its job must be braced so that you can transmit the power, because in a weight room, when you're squatting or deadlifting, that's what you're doing, all right? But if you're bracing your core in neutral, you basically can lift something heavy. You can't even jump if you brace it in neutral. You got to flex and extend if you're going to jump, right? So brace, and by the way, the guy who wins the deadlift contest, he's hunched over because connective tissue is stronger. And if your objective is to pick up a heavy weight, well, we got to break some rules, and body's going to suffer if we're going to win, right? So pedestrian theory. And this is the fundamental problem that has become sort of the dogma and the sort of the defining paradigm or foundation of our time, is that the pedestrian theory, Grakovetsky was wrong. Now we know better. You have to brace your core because the core doesn't generate power. It couldn't be further from the truth. And once you understand the biomechanics of it, it couldn't be more simple. You'll read something from a predominant expert with 300 peer-reviewed articles about how you got to brace your core to run, and at the moment when you hit a baseball, your core braces. It's like, wait a minute, what about when the guy misses the ball? When did he brace? If you think you're hitting a home run, you missed the ball, you didn't stop to brace. You know what I mean? It's a reflexive pressurization that the movement is slowed down for a very fraction of a second, but that ball's going over the fence because you're not bracing. And if I were to tell my buddy who's a contractor who doesn't even know what a femur is and couldn't care less, hey, do you brace your core when you swing a baseball bat? He'll go, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, why are you asking me such a stupid question? I'll buy the next round. Or no, you buy the next round for asking me something so stupid, right? So that's my feeling on the bracing core and coiling core. And coiling core, people have used the term you coil your core before. Okay, so I didn't invent that. But what I do is I use coiling core training as a way to describe the distilled essence of how to create the greatest foundation for rotational power, and in the process increase your ability to brace the core in neutral stronger. And it is a simple formula. The side of your body where the ninth rib descends and comes down. So if you slice the body in half front to back, right in that midline where the ninth rib is, which happens to coincide where T12 and L1 juncture, that is your central axis on the side of the body. It does not move relative to the shoulder going down and back, same side hip coming up and forward, and the alignment is head over foot. If you do that, and there's very specific exercises you do, you will get an immediate carryover to faster, and you will have the conventional rest, recovery, adaptation response that just keeps getting better. And why do I know this? Because we have thousands of athlete hours in with wonderful people like Dr. Chris Holder at Cal Poly, an athletic program that's one step down from the elite, which means you get to coach every athlete from every team as the strength coach. You know, you're not just that coach. You're coaching all, right? And he will tell you that the most important exercise and training concept that one can do is coiling core. And once you learn it, you can complete an entire set, both sides of the body. You train it ipsilaterally in less than 1 minute. You don't need to do it a long time. Because when you know what button to press to get the result, well then boom, you do it, right? And so back to Pavlov press, it's based on this concept that the core doesn't generate power. We've got to do this and we've got to do that, right? And so you see it everywhere, and people do multiple variations on it to boot, and it's worse than a waste of time. It's actually counterproductive. But these athletes are so good at that, and it's not hurting you per se. It just is. It's unscrambling. It's scrambling the egg that you now have to neurologically unscramble, and there's the immediate carryover effect is detrimental, and then you sort of come back, you get out from being discombobulated, and now you're back to normal. But there was a cost, and certainly an opportunity cost for having done that exercise. And the reason I know this is because faster is faster, and if you look at the video, you see the clock never lies. The video camera, the eye in the sky, never lies, provided it's not edited like a reality show. That never lies either, but it can be misinterpreted. The clock doesn't lie, and it can't be misinterpreted. So when you take the objectivity and reality and ultimate truth of the clock, and then you, in light of that, you view the video, now you can see the truth. Nobody who is fast braces their core.
Yeah,
to run or jump.
You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast, brought to you by SimpliFaster. Yeah, I agree. You watch the video and you see it. I mean, it's a lot to unpack there too. So I'm going to kind of try to walk back through some of the things you said and roll through those just a little bit. So one of the things, actually, before I lose this in my mind, because I had just thought this while you're kind of saying it at the end, and if I go through everything back again, I'm probably going to forget because I don't have my notepad too today. But this would be so simple. This would be a great experiment, but I think a lot of people don't think this way. Is like you said, you get the neurological effects of what you just did. It sticks with you. Like if you do complex training where you do a squat and a vertical jump or a clean and a sprint, what you just did sticks with you. So, and you eventually will get out of it. I've been through enough kind of neuro-based like therapy courses. I've seen that kind of happen. But it'd be cool experiment. Like, okay, have 3 groups of athletes. One group does a bunch of pallet press, then does a 10-yard dash or 20-yard dash. One group just does nothing, and one group does. Actually, I'll have to put in the show notes like the Royal Coil that you've talked about. Yes. I'll put that in there. And one group does that. I feel like if you, rather than arguing, just think if we all, instead of just arguing on social media threads about who is right, because, I mean, you can either be right or you can learn, like, just why don't you yourself try it? Like, try doing an exercise, a priming exercise, and see how it affects your sprint. Like, do that before you just, and going back to, I think that would be a really interesting way to solve things rather than just jumping, into your limbic system and having to defend yourself. But even on the Cal Dietz video where he was saying, look, like bracing your core shuts you down neurologically, and giving a few examples, and then you look through those you look through the threads and the comments, and it's like the people who are really fired up about not bracing, like who are really in love with bracing and don't want to let it go at all, are like the power lifter people, the Olympic lift. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just, if that's your paradigm, is lifting the heaviest weight possible, I can see how you would be there. Like that's the standard to you. That's your standard of what makes an athlete in many cases. And so you are going to circle back to your bread and butter when at the end of the day, it's the video of how the athlete moves on the field is, that's your standard, and how do I impact that? And how do I impact the time they ran or how high they jumped?
Well, yes. I mean, you're everything you said is correct in terms of like the goal specific thing. If your goal is to pick up the thing about weightlifting, it's similar to sprinting, is you're never done, right? I mean, a baseball weighs what a baseball weighs, your body weighs what your body weighs, but sprinting, you always want to go faster, and weightlifting, you always want to go heavier, right? And so you don't want torsional rotation in weightlifting, right? You want that packed, pressurized system that is essentially 50-50, right? Because you're not going anywhere but up. And with regard to some kind of a science test, the most accurate science is the results. Like, and I'm going to go to the Fosbury flop, okay? So first of all, let me say, nobody has ever scientifically proven gravity. So we could start with that in terms of the people who need the peer-reviewed study, okay? First, let's go figure out and study gravity and then get that one scientifically proved, and then we can talk about these others, all right? So basically, if you were to take 3 groups and do this, there's too many other factors that sort of get in the way. You can really only test one person against themselves to get the most accurate, and it has to be longitudinal in the sense that, let's say you had the flu and you do something well. Okay, you didn't do as well, and then you feel great and you had 6 Red Bulls and you did better doing something else. So it has to be aggregated over time, and the Fosbury flop is probably the most dramatic representation of a technique change that changed everything, and it doesn't need science, okay? Science came after, oh, well, you go over the bar, but your center of mass doesn't. Okay, yeah, pretty cool, we understand that. But ultimately, who gives a shit? I mean, if I'm talking about just getting the result, what's the difference? And so when somebody says to me, like, I say, hey, look, pulsing the arms is faster than swinging them. Well, I want to see the science. Well, okay, well, then you can wait, get in line and get on later. Doesn't matter, right? You could teach the Western roll, keep teaching it. It doesn't matter, right? Oh, and Palloff press, it's a counterproductive area. No, it's not. It's a great exercise. I know John Palloff. Like, oh, okay. Like, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I got nothing against him. The thing's named after him. Big deal. I mean, but is that the criteria from which we're going to judge the efficacy of the exercise, that you like them? Right? I mean, and that's why even me, I don't matter. It doesn't matter it's the ideas that are in the ring. And what I'm doing is I'm just banging the drum saying, hey, my idea is in the ring, and my idea is Muhammad Ali. My idea is the best. It's the greatest. It's never been done in 7 million years, running faster, carrying weights, and we'll get to that. But part and parcel to it is coiling the core with your head over your foot. And there's a fine line between misinformed and willfully ignorant. And so caution to anybody out there who has that knee-jerk reflex of, oh, that guy Weck doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's a pussy. He invented the BOSU ball, right? Because that can be a knee-jerk response. Just be careful that you don't come into the arena with your ideas without having done your homework. I am very impatient in terms of making change. Dick Fosbury had to wait 8 years to see his technique take hold because the powers that be didn't like it. So they didn't coach it. So 4 years later, in 1972, the Western roll wins the high jump. Now, how the hell is that possible? You have in hindsight, it could not be more obvious. Yet, the powers that be, the establishment, the ones who had control, didn't like it, so they didn't do it, and there wasn't social media. Donald Trump is the president, and maybe it's going to be Oprah, maybe it's going to be The Rock, okay? We live in a different world right now, and controversy is good. Everybody likes to see a fight, and so what I'm doing is I'm banging the drum, and I'm challenging people. I dare you not to do this training. Go ahead. Stay in your ideas. Hold your breath as long as you want. Doesn't matter. You're coming up for air because the Fosbury flop gets you over the bar higher. So that's basically this need for science. You don't need science, okay? Science follows the art and it explains it. And I'll explain to you scientifically why it works. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that the connective tissue transmits force faster than the muscle belly itself. And, why would you want to swing one arm up before you've hit the ground? I mean, does that make any sense? I mean, if time is of the essence, you don't have time to create the momentum of the arm swing. If you're doing a standing broad jump, well, then you have plenty of time to swing those arms and get that momentum that you're going to pull back on. And you can actually hold what the ancient Greeks called halters, weights in your hands, to create even more momentum and jump farther, from a standing broad jump with weights than you can without, because you can create all that momentum that takes forever to get. And then you go and you pull yourself. Now, in running, when time is of the essence, you can't wait for anything, right? In terms of getting off the ground, you got to hit the ground harder to get off it faster. So, and what I invented, the pulsars that we'll talk about, that's a shifting weight that allows you to hit the ground harder by thrusting both arms down to the event. The only thing that actually matters at all is maximum ground reaction force. In that moment, the body has to be balanced in position to capture it, to deliver it, and to capture it. And what you do in the air, whether you're Deion Sanders, you can drink a cup of coffee in the air or not, doesn't matter. It's what you do when you hit the ground. So that's for all the people who require the science. If you require it, well then good luck for you, because you're going to be behind the 8 ball and there will be the science. But just be careful when we do science that we're not kidding ourselves. And I know I'm talking a million things. I apologize, but there was a scientific study that proved BOSU balls are bullshit and that they make you slower and weaker. Okay, and it was billed as the definitive scientific research to prove that BOSU balls are bullshit, okay? And it has been the justification for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of BOSU haters out there, most aren't, but many are, to say, oh, well, there's science that says it's bullshit. But very few people do homework. But if you dig into it even a half inch, you realize that this scientific study didn't use BOSU balls. It used something that is completely 100% different in its training stimulus than a BOSU ball. But because BOSU balls are fun to beat up on, and if you say inflatable air cushion, well, who the fuck cares? If you say BOSU balls suck, well, yeah, okay, fuck them, they suck, right? So you've just assured yourself that you're a man. You've just assured yourself that you're strong and you're tough if you say a BOSU ball sucks in certain circles. Right? But that was a scientific study that set that out. Stuart McGill's got plenty of scientific studies about how the core, doesn't generate power. Doesn't mean he's right.
Yeah, I think ultimately, the research is always based on what the practice has shown before, and I think it is tough sometimes looking at like controlled studies versus like something like how fast did you go? It's definitely a different paradigm. I'd like to go back actually into what you were talking about with the sagittal plane, frontal plane, and transverse plane a little bit, because I think you just dropped a lot of information, and actually unpacking a little bit of it, I'd like to go back into some things we all can relate to, right? Like, and then I'd like to talk about how you like the royal coil and where that meets into it all, because I'm a big nuts and bolts guy. I like to talk about things that everyone's we're all familiar with, the plank and the side plank and the Palloff press and these things. So you mentioned there's two types of sagittal plane. There's the bracing, like you're going to lift something, and then sagittal plane bracing where you're still breathing. Can you go into that just a little bit? And
So basically, you just have to think in terms of pressure, right? Your body is the boundary. You are salt water contained and insulated by fat. Okay, so that's what you are, that's what I am, that's what everybody is, okay? And pressure is how we create strength. So you have to pressurize and brace, which means like you're fixed in a position to pick something up where you're not side bending, you're not flexing, extending, and you're not rotating in transverse at all, or twisting transverse. You just pressurized, like you want to be this, and that's why That's why a bodybuilder who's 4% body fat isn't as strong as he is in the off season when he's got 12% body fat. That's why the powerlifters have meat. That's why the opera singers are fat, because that gives them the stuff to resist against, right? You need some mana, as the Hawaiians say, if you want to be strong guest, okay? So that's the one kind of brace, to pick stuff up, right? The other kind of brace, you really want to use it as a bridge from brace strong from that brace and pressurize, hold your breath, Valsalva strong, to move and only reflexively brace based upon the forces that come upon you. Like a baseball, there's going to be a pressure peak forcing at the moment that the ball hits maximum, right? The sprinter's body is going to pressurize more when it hits the ground, okay? But that's reflexive. It's way too fast for you to think it or try it or intend. If you try it or intentionalize it, well, then you're just way behind yourself. You're slow. It doesn't work. So brace and breathe is basically a strategy where against sagittal movement, front, back, flexion, extension, you want to be able to brace that as strong as you possibly can and breathe as normally and as naturally as you can. Don't tense your face. Don't show me how hard you're working. I want you to, you're bracing that sucker so hard, but you can breathe. It's your breath, it's your blood, it's your bones. These are the things that matter, right? Air and blood is everything. And the bones is really what's strong in the body. And I got a whole theory on bones too. But so that bracing, the brace and breathe, is a bridge to be able to use that strong core strength where and when you need it for, when you have to do it. You're not too tired, right? It pays to train the diaphragm. And that's a wonderful way to train the diaphragm, because everything wants that. You want that universal irradiation of tension, but no, we don't, in fact. So when we come to the coil, now you're that much stronger to now create that rotate. And the difference between the person who does the Palloff press does not at a fundamental level understand the difference between rotating and twisting. Okay, twisting is no side bending, where the hips and the shoulders are going to change in terms of their axial relationship. That's if it's just purely transverse, it's a twist. Side bending is rotating, because rotating is a figure eight. It always is a differentiation. If you swing something, you are supinating and pronating. And the simple act of supinating is coiling to that side. The simple act of pronating is uncoiling to that side. And like I said at the beginning, locomotion, swinging, and throwing are all so intimately related that you couldn't have one without the others. Can't locomote without sticks and stones. And by the way, if you're carrying a long stick that's functional, which you have to carry everywhere, every day, you can't swing your arms one up, one down either. Can't do it, right? Oh, I'm going to carry a 7-foot long stick and I'm going to swing my arms 90 cheek to cheek. No, you're not. If you do that and you insist, your DNA ain't going to make it. Right? You're left back there and the lion ate you or whatever. You didn't catch the rabbit. So there's simple things that you have to understand. What happens is people get enamored of certain things. The transverse plane, it's like this mystical, wonderful thing. And, the strong guys do think too much sagittal. So, we'll go to transverse. It's like, wait a minute. Side bending's the thing that kicks it off. It all happens at the same time, but the biomechanical cascade starts with side bending. And if you watch a normal person, just watch a normal person standing 50-50, okay, and you say, hey, come over here, the very first thing they're going to do is they're going to shift their weight in the sagittal plane to differentiate. Unless you went to a pose running clinic or a G running clinic, they told you to fall forward. Like, what the hell are we doing? The people who succeed from that instruction succeed in spite of the instruction. They don't do the instruction, right? It's just, like I said, I'm having fun because it's like, look, I've done my homework. I know what I'm talking about, right? And I know this is very, very controversial, and I do it on purpose, like I said. Because, why don't you just keep your head down and let the work speak for itself? Because I want change to happen, and I want it to happen fast. That's why, right? I don't want to protect this and guard it and make it just my athletes and make the work spread for itself. No, I'm going to challenge everybody. Put the idea in the arena and say, hey, brace your core, right? Now try this royal coil and now see what happens. And don't try the royal coil. Wait till your competition does it and then you have to. So it doesn't matter.
You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast, brought to you by SimpliFaster. Yeah, so you had mentioned too, like the throw the salt over your shoulder thing. I know that's like the royal coil cue. Could you explain that really quickly? Like I know it's hard to explain it, and obviously I'll put show notes up, but just for people to give them an idea.
So here's how the royal coil was created. I knew the coiling core. I had Chris Holder and Chris White up at Cal Poly. They were the first ones, to institutionalize WeckMethod training at Cal Poly. Every athlete, every sport, better result. They went to Mount Sac the year that they introduced this, and I think they had like 21 personal bests at Mount Sac. Like 21. How many events are there in the track? Like 21 personal best in one meet? Like what? Right? So basically, I had already had the coiling core training, and it was already distilled down. But then I went and I met with Gray Cook, right? FMS. And I did. He invited me to come take his. I think it's the CMS, and I was 2 days in Southern California. He came out. He's a great guy, so eloquent, such a a Southern gentleman who just has a gift. So he was teaching, and he had everybody do this one leg kneeling, externally rotated 90 degrees front foot, and I studied a lot of Chinese internal arts, and one of them being Baguazhang, which it stands for 8 palms, and it's basically 8 steps around a circle. And I got weird and crazy for many, many years. I discovered THC, and for me it was a stimulant and a sensitizer. I could feel everything. So I spent 3 years walking around in a circle with internal rotate, external rotate, 8 steps, and that foundation is what led me to this reality, this truth. So as soon as Greg put us in that position, I was just like, holy shit. I got up and I went to the back of the room so that I, behind everybody, so I wouldn't be the distraction. And I just started doing my thing, okay? Because I felt like, oh my gosh, this brings me back to that. Oh my gosh. And it turns out that if I don't kneel, but I stand and I put that external rotation in, and then I turn and I tilt and I turn and I tilt, what it does is it fixes the hip relative to that 9th rib spot, where now it makes it extremely easy to bring the shoulder down and back. You just turn and tilt, turn and tilt, turn and tilt. And so by anchoring the hip with that central axis through that stance and root through the glute, now we can go so deep, and it's just so easy. And what you do for an athlete who's never done it is you have them stretch that area, the lower lat. It's as low into the lat as you can get, right? It's the fascial origin of the lat. And as they're stretching, you rub that spot, you make it warm, right? You make it warm because they're going to cramp if you don't do it. And it gives them that mind body, like, oh, that's where I'm supposed to feel it. And you do that on both sides, get them nice and warm. You feel that spot that got hot? Oh, yeah, that's what we're going to hit. And then they do it, and they're like, holy shit. And then you got to do the other side, because it's like, oh, Jesus, I'll walk around a circle if I don't. You do the other side, and boom, you've got this feeling of like, Jesus, your figure eights start. You watch Deion Sanders, you watch these guys that got that swag. They got that strut, right? That's underhand figure eight with the shoulders and head over foot. And they do it because they're big cats. They like efficiency because they feel efficiency, and they didn't have to figure out efficiency. Ask yourself, when is a panther out of balance? At what point is he doing a 90-degree lunge, rotating in the transverse plane, holding this or that? Like, you can't move from that position. So unless you're doing some kind of a stretch, why the hell are you doing it? You're getting tired, right? You're sweating, but is there a maximum carryover to that particular movement if you're training yourself in a position that you literally couldn't move out of that lunge? Big cat would never do it. Yeah. I'm not saying that there aren't circumstances when a specific lift where you're not in some poised to pounce position is necessarily bad. I'm just saying that if you're doing lunges where you ain't poised to pounce, I'm not going to do that. And I would say, like, well, can you explain to me why you're doing that? Like, I don't get it when I can coil that lunge and make it so that you're like 10 times more powerful. You can sustain the position for as long as you want. You're rooted through the glute, loading through the ball of the foot, right? And you be faster as a result. You throw farther, you hit harder. Like, which would you rather do, right? Doing step ups. Why the hell are you doing a step up without teaching a person to line the head up over the foot? Why the fuck are you doing A skips where you're landing without your head over your foot? Like, you watch Deshaun Jackson, on YouTube, and he's doing he's doing the conventional, what he'd been taught, 90-90, cheek to cheek, A skip, da-da-da-da-da, all braced up core, and then watch him run. He abandons all that bullshit. He abandons it because he's fast. You know what I mean? Like, you just spent 25 minutes warming him up, and you didn't do coil it once, you didn't do head over foot once, his elbows are coming very acute at the top, and they're opening way past 90 at the bottom. And if you watch him closely, he's doing a pulsing action more than a swinging action anyway. And even a moderately athletic person will pulse their arms to jog slowly, okay? I guarantee you, Joel, that if I say, hey, Joel, jog over here, head over foot, ba-boom, 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 and both hands will be going down until that moment of landing, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It's only when we try to go fast that we sort of resort to this preconceived notion that, we have to swing the arms, which is actually not as fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I like what you were saying too about, like, it's just interesting, right? Like, the athlete who can do all the robotic warm-ups that's all wrong and then come out of it and still be good. And we don't really notice it, and we think what we were programming was somehow helping them, but they were great anyways. I was talking with you before about a little bit, that guy from Indonesia just won the under 20. There's a big news story about him. He doesn't even afford running shoes, and he probably isn't that much of a coach, but yeah, when he opens up a top end, he's whooping everyone's ass, largely because of a lot of things he was not coached to do.
Well, and it's interesting, real quick, like Usain Bolt, when's the last time, in Usain Bolt's career, he went a long time since he actually ran really fast. We thought at 9.58 that we were going to see better than that, and we really didn't. What was his? Did he run a 9.69 after 9.58, or like he really didn't run that fast after that? Relatively speaking, we were looking at can he go 9.4? But, and I believe, and I don't hold me to this, but I believe his coach Glenn Mills, I think I saw somewhere him say, yeah, he's got too much side-to-side movement. We're trying to work on that and straighten him out. Like, oh, okay, that's curious. Michael Johnson does an analysis on TVC on the BBC of Usain Bolt. Oh, Usain Bolt doesn't have technique. He's all over the place, side to side. Blah blah blah. Look at Justin Gatlin, and he freezes the frame. Justin Gatlin's all coiled. It's like, okay, I'm not seeing the same picture. And he's telling, he's all side to side. His head's got to stay here. His shoulders got to stay level. Well, Michael, let's go to the video of you setting the world record, and let's see the shot from the front, Michael, and let's just take a look at how you did it, right? Side to side, shoulder going down, underhand figure eights. So here's a guy, best in the world, legendary, who doesn't even know what he did. So his construct is incorrect. He's incorrect, and he's telling everybody. So if you're wrong at the most fundamental level, like, there's a fundamental problem. And I'm just here. I'm the little boy who's just pointing out, King ain't wearing clothes. Like, and it's going to end. And all I'm doing by banging a drum like this is I'm bringing attention to it, and it's going to take care of itself. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Time tells, and time has told on the stopwatch, and now the calendar is going to confirm it. It's just, it's just a matter of moving forward. And we can all be friends in the end. I mean, I have plenty of respect for a lot of the contributions that all these people have. And Michael Johnson knows certain things that I don't know for sure, and I can't program and sort of have you peak at the right time. I don't have experience in doing that. I'm a biomechanist. I can't tell you what to eat. I can't tell you, do 8 120s. I can't tell you that. I can tell you how to run every single one of those 8, those 120s or whatever the hell you're going to do better. I can tell you the things you have to do in the weight room to make you better. So anyway,
Yeah, no, I actually have a follow-up question, then a transition question. So my follow-up question is this: I actually just you mentioned the coiling fit in with the lunge, and I actually did notice. I noticed in step-ups when I've done video on people doing step-ups, if you don't coach it, they actually do put their head over the foot because they have to. If they're not gonna unless they're gonna just eat shit and fall over. For the most part, I mean, I guess you could try not to, but I feel like it'd be really, really difficult. But if nothing else, it's like that is a teaching point, you know.
Well, and I mean, watch the non-athlete hike up Half Dome, and as you get to the top, they are putting their foot on the next rock. They're putting their head over that foot. They're putting their hands on that thigh, and they're going up because you know that they have to. Now, it's the guy, who's so hell-bent on the sagittal plane who is strong enough to do it poorly. He's all out of balance. He doesn't even know he's out of balance. So it's all relative to each individual. And so there are, and everybody who does it can do it better. It's like just because you're Serhei Bubka doesn't mean you couldn't get better, right? I mean, it's all relative to himself or herself. And you got to shave the onion real thin at the top. The gains are much, much harder to get and combine. They're small. They're measured smaller, but you can still get better until you can't. Technique. Tony Little. Technique. It's about how you use yourself. At the end of it, that's what you can control. You can't control what God gave you.
Yeah, I was gonna along the lines of the step up too. I was gonna ask you. So lunge with the coil. That seems like it would actually blend a lot of really important qualities together. How does that work?
It's magical. So here's what it is. Steve Cotter is a dear friend of mine. He is a lifelong martial artist and a master at movement, and extremely intelligent and learned and practiced, etc. Extremely powerful. When I showed him the Royal Coil, he had a rich history in the Bagua, and he goes like this. He goes, your lats are your feet, okay? Your lats are the most important movement muscle. And some listener out there, whoa, I don't like that you said that's more important. Okay, is the omohyoid or whatever, is that muscle more important than the lats? Just get over it, okay? They're all important. Your internal obliques, yes, okay? And your glutes to the lat, okay, I get it. You're an anatomist. I'm a biomechanist. Even kinesiology. You can go into the weeds a million times and look at each sarcomere. I'm a biomechanist. I care about the movement. I don't give a shit about anything else, okay? It's when you coil, the lats do it all, and now you get to regulate where the other muscles do, and now you can use the glute in a ball of the foot lunge. You match the spine and shin angles. You're on the ball of the foot, and you're coiled up, and now you don't feel it anywhere else. Your lats doing it. You differentiated the lats. You got that one side, and you exaggerate the living shit out of it in the exercise, because it's going to regulate itself when you do the movement. And the lower down I can drive that shoulder down and back, guess what? When I'm opening up and I'm running, I ain't going to bring it that low, but that means my hip can come up forward and higher in relative because I shorten the distance, right? It is so simple. And once you discover it, once you do it, you're like, holy shit, I can make my glute work, ball of the foot lunge, and it's easy. It's easy. Why the fuck am I trying? Sorry for swearing. Why am I trying to make something harder? I tell my athletes, I say, listen, we're going to work effortless power and then apply maximum effort. If I tell you to go start banging your head against the wall, what the fuck? I get you tired. I don't get you better, right? So the lunge with the coil, it's huge. To me, it's like once I see the light, it's like, I can't understand why you would do a conventional, put your weight through your heel and keep your knee behind your toe and keep upright and now keep your shoulders level and now rotate your body, palms together. Okay, good. Now next rep. You're getting yourself tired. Yes, you are. And you're getting stronger. But where's the carryover? It's like trying to pick up buckets of water with a spaghetti strainer. The thing's going to be wet, but it ain't going to be full, right? So the lunge is huge. And then there's all sorts of differentiation. Once you have the foundation, the fundamental, you do all sorts of variation. And you can make, and now look, I'm 48 years old and I'm a fast, slow guy, okay? I'm not fast compared to someone who's fast, but I'm fast. And unless you're fast, I went up to Cal Poly where every single athlete does the coil, they do the pulse, they do the WeckMethod 45 deadlift, they do the BOSU Elite compression, every single one of them. And I'm running repeat 100s with these guys at 48 years old, and I didn't stretch. And I'm not coming in last place. There's certain kids who are going to beat me and nothing I could do to beat them. They're just better than me. But in the skilled positions, I'm not coming in last place. In the skilled positions, 48 years old, and I didn't stretch.
Yeah, when you do it right, you don't need to stretch. Or well, you shouldn't need to stretch anyways, but
well, and that's one where it's like, look, I'm not against stretching and all that, but I don't stretch. I'm lazy in that terms. I don't like to stretch. Why? And look, yeah, I'll stretch a little, like like a cat stretches, but I don't want to sit there and stretch for a half an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Like I just don't want to do that. If I were competing, maybe I would, but I'm not, so I don't.
Yeah,
but I love being able to just turn it on and go 90+% right out of the gate. I sprint all over the place. I hate running, but I love to just bop around. I basically don't really go much further than 100 meters ever if I can help it. And, the sweet spot's around, 60 meters or so. I just love tear it out 60 meters over there, tear it out 20 meters over there, bing, bing, bing. I'm known at the stores that I frequent. When I go into the drugstore to get my prescription, I come choo, 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 choo. And then since they know me now, they don't worry that I'm running out too. But they're like, oh, you're the guy that runs. Mm-hmm. And the irony is, no, I don't run. I just love to move with that efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting when you can move right, and how little you have to warm up when you move correctly. I wanted to get into that lunge real quick. Maybe we can get a show notes in there. In terms of so let's say the left leg is forward. And are you coiling then with the left shoulder down and the left hip up? So
yes.
Okay, that makes sense. I understand that.
So basically what you're doing is you take care of it with the lat. Because once you take care of it with the lat, now everything else is just anchored with that lat, and your lat becomes your foot.
Got it.
So your lats or your feet was a very prophetic statement from someone who knows movement. And like I said at the beginning, feeling is knowing, right? If you don't know what orange juice tastes like, I could describe to you in, a trillion words, and just a simple solution here. Take a sip. Now you know, right? And so once you feel the coil, okay, now you know, right? And then once you see the enhancement to your performance, well, there's your incentive to do it. And time and energy efficiency, it's huge. You don't need to, and I insist when I train somebody, the only person who I'll make really tired is Dominic Cruz. Because he's in MMA and he needs, 5 times 5 minutes, 5 rounds. Mm-hmm. So I will make him very, very tired. But not anyone else who I work with do I make really, really tired. I just say, look, if you want to get really, really tired, we'll go somewhere else. You can do everything WeckMethodized here, or else go somewhere else. I don't care. And when you leave here 90 minutes later, I want you to feel like you go play. I don't want you to feel all wrecked. It's not about wrecking. You don't take a thoroughbred is not a donkey. You don't whip the sucker, right? You got to treat the thoroughbred right. And even with Dominic, everything we do is still WeckMethodized, but it's just the sequencing and the rest and stuff. And we're sacrificing maximum power for him. If I wanted to make him jump higher, well, we wouldn't crush the shit out of him metabolically like that. We just wouldn't do it, as you know.
Yeah, I'm definitely a believer that you have to do things right before you make them, I guess, quote unquote, hard. Like if you work hard first, you just do wrong. You're going to do wrong a lot and get wrong in the system a lot.
Yes.
And before, even I think you and I were talking a little bit about Marvin Marinovic's training methods and how the athletes who tell me about that, who have been through this program, it doesn't make you sore. Like your body is working the way it's supposed to. It's almost as if you get sore when your body is has to learn a way to move that it wasn't supposed to naturally, or something extra, the sagittal plane, overloading the sagittal plane. I don't know. I mean, I like lifting heavy weights, but it's easy to, I think, see things differently sometimes. I wanted to ask you a question that bridges things in, because I think we got about time for one more. And that's this. Okay, so people who would say, playing devil's advocate a little bit here. Okay, so you have a studies, brace your core. I have, let's say I have a coach who's like, I got a lot of kids, young kids, and they're all over the place when they run, and their core is obviously weak and terrible. And so I'm going to, brace their core, and then they'll hopefully get better. What are your thoughts on that scenario? and maybe you can see where I'm like leading you right. I'm lining you up for the next question, but
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
what's your
okay,
take
yeah.
there?
So I mean, that's just a terrible excuse. Like I, there was a trainer in my gym once, okay, and I had, sort of, in order for me to not have to wake up at 5 in the morning, I passed off a guy and I said, okay, you do this, this, this. You trail me for 4 sessions, and then you're gonna do it. I came in the gym, and he had this guy doing like dumbbell bench presses in a conventional 1-arm row, and I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Oh, well, we're just doing this as a baseline. So I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? It's like, get the hell out of here. Go do that shit somewhere else. You're not doing that here. You're not going to waste a second. So for a 7-year-old, no, I'm not going to teach him to brace his core because you don't want to brace the core. I'm going to create games and fun, and I'm going to let the kid make as many mistakes as necessary because I don't give a shit. I just want that kid to be excited to come back, and I'm going to layer in stuff that makes him better. And give me 2 months with that kid, and I'll make him better, okay? That's how you train a kid. You don't teach him to brace his core and do wrong things in a path to doing it right. That's a terrible excuse. Oh, well, I'm just, well, he's so bad anyway. Well, come on. That just means you, the coach, do not know what to do. And I get livid about that because, I mean, look, this kid, his time and energy is precious too. Why the fuck are you teaching him something wrong? Well, it's because you don't know better. You mean well, and I get that. And like I said, there's a fine line between misinformed and willfully ignorant. So once you heard the message and you now start being willfully ignorant, like some people, well, guess what? Your relevancy in the industry is going to go down, down, down. Because what's happening is like popcorn. Pop, 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 and then plup, plup, plup. And then pretty soon, in terms of swinging the arms one up, one down, that goes away. Pal-off press, brace your core like that, that goes away. It's gone. You can't even count the popcorn. And it's because the competitive nature of athletes forces them to do the Fosbury flop and not the Western roll, even though there were hundreds, if not thousands, of coaches who had a massive problem with that and were unwilling to change until the change happened. And it's the same bullshit today. It's the same, but there's a deafening silence amongst a lot of the experts. And I know because I've reached out to some of them. Respectfully, right?
Yeah, I wanted to use that to kind of lead into the arms a little bit because we're running out of time, but I definitely wanted to touch on this because you mentioned it already, and I've seen this myself with like the pulsars, and just like getting the arms right in many cases fixes what we thought was like a weak core. Like, oh, you have a weak core, you need to go do whatever lift and a bunch of abs, and then you'll be better. But then all of a sudden your arms are fixed, and you're linking in the fascial system, and now. Yes. Oh, maybe you didn't have a really weak core.
Yes.
So anyways, talk a little bit about arms. Okay. Probably just a few minutes on swinging and what's good arm practice in that realm.
Okay, so basically, look, we want to use as much connective tissue as we possibly can. Okay, so the muscle belly, its job is to support the connection between the connective tissues, and to generate power, force, you need connective tissue, right? And if you look at a good athlete, even a moderate athlete, jog around, they're going to be pulsing their arms, they're going to land head over foot. Okay, that's what they're going to do because there's no pressure. So they're just going to do what feels natural, right? And they're just going to do that, and that they're doing it correctly because now they're using connective tissue. Okay, so now with the arms, let me go back to something that Charlie Francis said. They were talking about the hip flexors. Charlie Francis, he didn't know what I know about the arms. He knew tons more in terms of many other aspects. I'm not trying to say that, he's still one of the greats and someone I study a lot. But he said one time, I'll never forget, he said, well, if you're running right, how much work do the hip flexors actually have to do? Right? If you're doing everything else right, how much work do the hip flexors actually have to do? And I'm not saying don't make your hip flexors strong. I am saying you got to make them strong the right way. But when you pulse the arms, it's a double down pulse. It's what you do when you jog slow, and it's what Deion Sanders, Randy Moss, Lawrence Taylor, Darrell Green, Walter Payton, Bob Hayes, the list goes on. Even Usain Bolt himself, he doesn't do it flawlessly, but he does a pulsing action. Your shoulder doesn't pop up on either end of the stroke if you're swinging your arms, okay? if you're swinging the arm the way your coach taught you, your shoulder's staying down low. Your shoulder ain't popping up the way Usain Bolt's shoulder popped up real high because he's pulsing with his elbow, not his hand. So he's not making maximum use of the mass of his hand, which he could had he been trained to do it, okay? So in order to run your absolutely fastest, the best pulser in the world ever was Deion Sanders. And you think in terms of straight ahead speed a lot because you deal with track athletes and you're really a jump specialist as far as I know, because I've seen your stuff on jumps and it's amazing, right? But multi-directional, the pulsing of the arms, it pays even a bigger return because you got all those breaks and cuts and stops and goes, and every single one of those you're not pushing out of the break. Now you're popping, you're bing, and now it's a connective tissue jolt because you use both hands. And that foot that's hitting the ground is the hand that's coming forward, right? That's the side that's hitting the ground. Why in the hell would you be swinging the arm up at the moment that you're hitting down? It's a complete waste. It physics, it doesn't make sense. It's load, explode. It's action, reaction. So if I'm ahead of myself by having my right arm coming up and my right foot going down, well, how the hell am I applying maximum force to the ground? And remember, when you jog slowly, you're doing it right. It's the construct. If you take a human being, you don't expose it to other human beings walking, that human being ain't going to walk. It ain't going to talk. Most coordinated part of your body is your mouth and your tongue and your eyes. Second place is your hands. Fastest part of your body is your eyelids. Second place is the hands. And we know that we use connective tissue in swinging and throwing, right? Well, why the hell wouldn't we use connective tissue in sprinting? Deion Sanders does, Randy Moss does, Gerald Green does, Bob Hayes does, Usain Bolt does, but none of them were coached to do it.
Yeah, no, right. The fascialists make sense too.
And then it feels it. As soon as you feel it, you're like, oh my God. It's like Phil McConkey. I trained Phil McConkey. He's a master sprinter. He was a New York Giant, played in the Super Bowl. So I watched him as a kid, and now I've worked with him now a couple of years. He's running now 60-meter dashes and 100-meter dashes and now the 300-meter hurdles, believe it or not. He may even be like the gold medalist in the world at the 300-meter hurdles we're discovering. It's pretty remarkable. But he is running faster at 60 years old than he did at 56 years old. And at the master's track level, above the age of 50, you get 1/10 of a second slower every year. That is the mean average. So the record for the 55-year-old is a half a second slower than the 60-year-old, and that's a mean average. And so that's what's happening, okay, give or take. He is faster at 60 than he was at 56. And I remember the practice. It was before I had invented the flight fight pulsers. I taught him to pulse because I taught him to coil, and the coil goes hand in hand with the pulse. And he's one of these guys who's reluctant to change. He's been doing it his way for a long time. So you got to lead the horse to water very gently and feed him a little bit of salt so he'll want to drink it, right? And then I taught him the coil. He got the pulse. And in that practice, he ran 3 120s, okay? 3 120s in that practice. First 2 120s, I record every single rep so I can analyze it because I can't see it in real time. The third 120, when he got the pulse, he took one fewer step and he outran the rabbit. And this 7-year-old with him who could, basically stay half a step in front of him to pull him along, okay, anytime I want to dust you, I can, and, pull up a body length. This guy was so discombobulated because Phil McConkey ran like, he ran 6.5 feet faster than he did the first and second rep. And you count the steps and he ends on the other foot. This guy who's running rabbit didn't win that rep. And his form broke down as he's coming down the lane. And just like, what the hell? Like, I can't beat him. Right? And then Phil McConkey, he goes, and I'm not even as tired because I'm using connective tissue. And again, go to Deion Sanders. Right? And then go to a moderately athletic person running slowly. They're pulsing their arms.
Yeah, I've started to notice that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's head over foot, too. Anybody who tells you it's not head over foot does not know what they're talking about. They say, oh, you got to keep your head in the middle. Run. Go put your head over your foot and get the hell away from them as fast as you can because they're not helping you.
One of the beautiful thing of it all is like Charlie Francis, your arms swing down, not back. And also, it was funny, I was reading James Smith's Applied Speed Training again not too long ago, and he was saying, give a Charlie anecdote, how the arms are like neurologically closer to the brain than the foot, like the order of the signal, and how the hands can change everything. And I'm just like, wow, this is so important. And it's just funny, like you'll hear these posts, see these posts on social media and Twitter and stuff on like how not to coach the arms and the arms don't put force to go, and everybody likes it. And I'm like, you guys even think about like what you're liking. You're like, I'm just like, I mean, the biggest changes I've seen have been, and like I alluded to, like I've seen someone with a very weak core, you would say, throw pulsers on, run, and all of a sudden everything's like aligned, and I didn't have to do any sort of, dead bugs. I mean, not that dead bugs are bad or whatever, but like I didn't have to do anything that's like core oriented to fix that. They just tapped into their fascial system and stabilized the system. Like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's simple too. It's not complex. It's really easy.
Well, it's like it's almost like if you're playing the guitar and you don't hold the string down right on the fret, it's not going to vibrate well, right? As soon as you get the right position, hold that string down, bing, it's going to play. And so that it's like that fascial ding. It shoots the force through you very, very fast. And the other thing I would say is, it's all important. So when I say your internal oblique, if you subscribe to the theory that your internal and external obliques are your rotational muscles, well then where the hell is the lat? I mean, What are you talking about, right? Yes, they are, and they're important. If we cut them, you wouldn't be able to move so well. But it's the lats, and the lats are going to bring that hip up and forward for you, and then add the hip flexors, then add the the abdominals. But you can't do it without Bo Jackson. The lats are the most. Grakovetsky has this amazing video of a guy who's born without legs. The guy's walking, right? And what he's doing when he's walking, he's doing overhand figure eights, but it's still the spinal engine. And if I were coaching, I don't know, he's probably dead by now, but if I were coaching, I would teach him the underhand figure eight because that's consistent with the leg locomotion. But nevertheless, he's still coiling the core because you have flight and you have fight. Those are the movement priorities, right? Because at the end of the day, all that matters is the birds and the bees so that you can, keep the human race running. I mean, you take that away and nothing else matters. So those are your fundamental functions, is flight and fight. And so flight is extremely objective. It's so simple. Couldn't be simpler. It's head over foot, coil the core, pulse the arms. Okay, bang. And then you can get into the weeds and start to fine tune and make everything else better. But fight is so subjective. A beats B, B beats C, C beats A. Who's a better fighter? I don't know. I am, he is, they are, she is, right? It's Christians and Muslims fighting it out. And so styles make fights. And so you have overhand figure eights in fight. You have underhand figure eights, but you sure as shit don't have brace against twist in any of it.
Yeah, right on. It's nice to simplify those things too, and when you simplify things to other components, you start to see it show up a lot, and it just really confirms what you're doing. So you have to wait for that research study to come out 5-10 years down the road. But I think, David, I think that's about all the time I have for the show today. But hey, perfect. Thank you so much for your insight, the knowledge of biomechanics, man. It's just, I think it's making the world of athletics a better place and making people faster. So thank you for your time. Thanks for tuning in for that controversial but extremely informative episode. I can't imagine that you didn't, I mean, especially if you're like me and for a period of time when you were just getting into the sports performance strength and conditioning industry, it's brace, 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 and all these different ideas revolving around that, and the myriad of exercises are revolving around that. And all of a sudden you look at the coiling and you look at videos and you see it and it rocks your world. And there's all these new training implications and things that can deliver instant results. And I hope you guys have fun playing around with that. If nothing else, just looking at athletic movement in a new light and have something new, having brought something new to the table. So we'll see you guys next week with another great guest. In the meantime, if you like this and what we're doing, please don't hesitate. If you have your phone on you, drop us a 5-star review. Would love that on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever you're listening to. Also, visit our sponsor, SimpliFaster.com, suppliers of high-end training technology. Freelap timing system being my favorite timing system. That thing rocks. They got force plates. They got EMS units, contact grids, K-Box, and more. Check them out. We'll see you guys soon.